Yeah. All right. Well, hello. I am Dr. Deb Howell with Dose of Deborah, and I am so excited to have my guest today, Dr. Katie Hohman, who is a physical therapist, and she is a business owner with an electronic medical record practice management system called Hino, and I've invited her here today because, you know, COVID, this pandemic has affected us in a variety of ways. And I had heard Katie speak to some of the things that she had gone through, and I felt that she was speaking from my perspective, and I felt that I was alone in this, and clearly I was not. And so my hope today is that she will share what this time, these, you know, since March or so, has brought forth, and in hopes that if you're going through anything like this, that you know there is another side that you do come out of. So welcome, Katie.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah. So, you know, you're in Florida. Is that where you are?
Yep. Orlando.
Orlando. Okay. How is it over there? It's getting hot here. I'm in Vegas.
Oh, and humid.
Yeah.
You don't have the humidity. We have the humidity. It's awful.
It's already over 100.
Oh, yeah. We're like low 90s, but it probably feels like 100 with how wet and sticky it is.
So anyway, you know, I heard you speak and talk about some of the things that, you know, this time, having time, really, extra time on your hands, and the change in how your business was going. But, you know, I'd love for you to kind of let folks know, give a starting point, and then kind of take us on your COVID journey here.
Okay, sure. So I own 2 clinics outside of Orlando. I have a little over 20 staff members. We see probably about 450 visits a week between the 2 offices. So pretty move-in clinics. Mainly outpatient orthopedics, but everyone that, you know, all the therapists I have kind of have their own little niche, which is neat. So, you know, I have some that are more into vestibular and balance disorders. I have one that's more into spine rehab, sports, peds, kind of a very good mix of, you know, different patient populations that we serve in our communities, which is awesome. 2019 was a great year. That was the first full year for me as a practice owner that I didn't treat patients. And so for me, that was like a huge accomplishment. I felt like that I didn't have to be at that point, and I could touch more people's lives in our community by adding on more clinicians to help them. So that was a huge thing. So going into 2020, I was like, this is awesome. Like, let's continue to kind of rock and roll. We also do own a software company. So I see a little bit of a different perspective than most clinic owners in the fact that I communicate way more heavily with other practice owners, big and small, you know, 50 clinics to single clinic, 1 provider practices. So kind of all over the spectrum. So it's kind of neat on a normal basis pre-COVID to kind of see, you know, what struggles they have and what they're going through and how they make things work for their practice. So then COVID came, and let's see, that was for us in Florida that my kids were on spring break, really the first week that it hit us. There were cases down in Miami, but we're pretty kind of, Miami's kind of isolated from the rest of Florida to some extent. So it was, you know, there were known cases down there, but it didn't really impact us until I think it was the 2nd week in March. And we were actually supposed to fly back home to New York for my kids' spring break. And that obviously didn't happen. So instead, I come into the office Monday morning and I'm like, it's all over the news. That's all the staff is talking about. That's all patients are talking about. And I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And Monday through Wednesday is when I really, we started to see like major drop off of patients, too nervous to come out, wanting to wait and see what happens, things totally understandable, but like devastating to a business. So I was stressing a lot. Obviously I've never been presented with something this crazy before in business, that affects, everybody on my team.
So quickly, and too, it happened quickly.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I could have hung on a little bit longer, but on Thursday, so basically that fourth day in, I felt like I just needed to like kind of rip the Band-Aid off, and I actually furloughed 12 of my employees in the same couple of hours. Because I knew if I didn't do that, none of us would have anything to come back to. I just got
goosebumps.
Wow.
That
was the most emotional day of my life in any situation, whether it was work or home.
Okay, let me take a moment a second. Like, I seriously, like, I have not had anything remotely like that in decisions with other people and their lives and their livelihoods. So that bypasses my thought. My body just, like, my arms are just tingling because you're clearly, this is like, I can feel this. I can feel that weight of that decision. Holy smokes.
Oh, it was awful. And I mean, on Wednesday, I must have walked, I don't know, between Wednesday and Thursday, I probably walked 10 miles, just like back and forth through the parking lot, on the phone with my husband, on the phone with our practice manager, trying to figure out, like, what do I need to do here? And I was nonstop watching the TV and trying to watch every move our governor was making here. Cause I was hoping that he would be like, nope, everyone needs to shut down. Katie, you need to shut your doors. Cause I thought for me, that would be an easier decision. I wouldn't have to go to my employees and say, hey, I'm making this decision that I need to put you on furlough right now. Instead, I could almost pass the blame to somebody else. And that was like my initial thought process. And then after, kind of mulling that over for a little bit, I'm like, no, like, that's not why I'm here. That's not why I'm in this position as an owner of a practice. The reason I'm here is because I am tasked with that duty of making those hard decisions and being able to figure out what's going to benefit the company and the team as a whole, and not just me. So that's kind of how I arrived at that decision.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So, okay. All right.
And what's interesting to me is, so I had employees that, this was the week of spring break. And so I actually had quite a few employees that were off on PTO because their kids were on spring break and they weren't necessarily going anywhere, but they were off. And so a lot of those conversations that I had with the staff I furloughed was on the phone. I didn't see them in person. They were at home. They were enjoying their vacation time. And so I had to call them, or my office manager called them. We just kind of took turns. But a lot of them reached back out to me within the next couple hours and was like, I just know you. I know who you are. Please don't stress about this. I know the situation is awful. So it was like they were comforting me. And I was like totally blown away by that.
Yeah. And, and that's the relationship that's built, in the hiring, in the culture that you create as a business owner, right? It matters. It matters.
Yeah.
Through and through, right? For the patient care, for the quality of care, the quality of interaction throughout, right? The
Absolutely.
Organization. So, well, that's wonderful. That's really tremendous to have their support, in this monumental decision. Holy smokes.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. If that, I mean, that could be a game changer. If they weren't supportive, I probably would have had an emotional breakdown further than I did, you know? I mean,
So,
that's what would make or break everything for me.
so now some points in time as you were going through, you know, your the work changes, you know, it was kind of a process for you. Can you speak a little bit to what you were going through and maybe like, you know, the roller coaster kind
Yeah.
of ride?
Yeah. So I got the advice early on from a mentor to journal and document as much as I can through this. And it sounds like such a simple thing to say, you know, do that. And I've journaled many times in the past, but I never really thought of like taking the time in the middle of this crisis to do that. So I probably wouldn't have without that recommendation, but it allowed me to reflect a little bit more on how the day was. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, every day was like, it was like a roller coaster. I would have just a horrible day. The numbers would get worse, you know, issues with just things would come up and it would just be the most stressful day ever. And then the next day might be a lot better and looking hopeful. And then the next day it goes back. And it was just like this roller coaster of how the business was operating, but also this huge roller coaster of emotions for me. And so being able to put that into words, I think really, really helped me to be able to kind of organize how I'm feeling, and be able to make decisions based off of that. You know, I feel like we had to make things happen and progress rapidly. So even after laying off or furloughing 12 people, I still had to shrink down my schedule. I had to cut hours, which meant cut in pay for a lot of people that were still there. Then we had to go to 3 days a week. And it just kept getting smaller and smaller. And of course, there's that real fear, like, does it ever get so small that there's nothing, you know?
Right.
And scary. So, I mean, that went on for a good 6 weeks, probably. And then, you know, we finally started to turn a corner a little bit. And of course, some of the programs that are out there, the government assisted stuff that they put out there, my husband and I were on top of it, you know, before it came out, you know, doing our due diligence and research and trying to figure out if there was anything that could possibly help us because we were hanging on by a thread.
Right. Yeah, because the uncertainty, clearly the unpredictable nature of this time. I mean, I think a lot with how we handle things normally in a sense of, because it's a skill set. Management is a skill set, right? Just general thing. But then what I have noticed from this time, at least, and I can speak for myself, is that the internal management, right? How are we managing like this uncertainty in our own body as far as our nervous system, right? Because this is happening everywhere. I mean, not just the United States. It's you know, I like to say that there's no escape here. Like, is there like where's is there another door? Is there another option? There's, you know, there's nowhere to go with this except to go in. Like, you have to go in. And that has been my lesson through this, is that with everything that's uncertain on the outside, because I had not worked for 9 weeks, and financially, right, I didn't have any responsibility for other people, but I have obligations, and you know, and this other level of stability, on a basic level of our needs, our daily needs, right, really had a lot to do with how am I going to not complicate an already complicated situation by just like making myself sick, right? And so what I kind of hear you saying is that like finding things, the journaling, did you walk too and or get outside and like do other things? Like,
Yeah, I've exercised the last, since this started. And it all started with, I needed to get out of the office and pace when I was on the phone trying to make these initial decisions. And then that got me just, I don't know, it felt better to move than sit here. Like I'm sitting here talking to you. If I was doing this in a stressed out situation, I feel like I feel so much worse. So I had to just move. And so I've been walking, I mean, not terribly far, but like at least 2 miles every single day for the last 70 days or something, because it makes me feel better.
yeah. Yeah.
I've had many bosses that were female that were always super emotional, and they let that kind of get in the way of them managing to some extent. And I never wanted to be that person. And that came out during a situation like this. Like I was to the point of like, I don't know, I'm going to implode if I don't like have a breakdown every once in a while. And it actually felt some sense of relief to be able to do that. And, when you say, not working and having for 9 weeks and having, all these financial obligations, I feel like to some crazy, I don't know, for some crazy reason, I feel like there's some sense of comfort in the fact that everybody is going through this, right? And it's not just like, I'm the only practice owner going through this. You're not the only, individual that's going through this major hardship. I feel like there's some sense of comfort to know like, oh my God, we're all in this together and we've all got to just figure this out.
Yeah. And that's, and that was part of my thought that there's no escape, because it's like everywhere is dealing with this and no one knows anything. Like,
yeah, right.
Everywhere, because within my own uncertainty with the places that I worked was uncertainty. So it's like you couldn't even try to find another job. Like everything was just on like, but I think the biggest thing that I feel like with this period of time, and I'm so grateful for the work that I have done on myself, because it's been a stretch of time that I've done a lot of inner work, right? I teach this stuff. And then I started questioning, because I realized, and I want to see what you say to this for yourself, but I realized that the kind of work that I do, and in the way I do it, because I work primarily in the inpatient rehab, so I'm with patients basically who are needing physical assistance and a lot of the emotional and mental, like the whole thing. It's very involved. And I know, I've done a lot to get to where I'm at, and I love what I do, but I didn't realize how much of my identity was like intertwined, like very, very tightly. And I started to question, like, who am I anymore? Because I literally, and it's weird to even say this, and it's not like I didn't have just idle time. I mean, it wasn't the physicality, but it was the emotional, mental work that I've been doing a lot of things. So there's stuff to come forth from what I've been doing, but it was very much a rattling and very disruptive time for me. But it gave me opportunity to reflect on, like, what is it that really matters to me anymore? Like, because if you feel like, well, I don't know, like, I just don't have any answers to give myself outside myself, right? So how am I going to find like that peace so that I can rest? And I'm not a dreamer. I'm not a person who dreams. I was having all kinds of like dreams that were not allowing me to even rest. So my rest wasn't restful, right? And this, I'm thinking, my sanity And I had not left my house literally for 4 straight weeks. I did not even go outside, which is nuts. I can't even think about it. And then when my first day out, I didn't drive, my husband drove, it's because I ran out of ink on the printer. I ran out of ink. So I had to get ink. But what was interesting was the social aspect of our existence, of our livelihood. And when I went out, and, the 6 feet apart, wearing the mask, and because I hadn't even left my house, I questioned my own, like, I don't even know how to act. Like, what am I supposed to do? Because it became foreign to me. It became foreign to me, which was foreign to me in itself.
To have that feeling.
Life became foreign to me, and then like my own self became foreign. Like, so there were a lot of things that this really put me through a rocking and rolling kind of thing. So, and that I'm managing myself. So you're managing yourself, and then what you're anticipating, how is this going to affect your staff, right? The people that you care about, and that the patients that they are in turn have been working with, and the whole business. So, but then there's still you as that centerpiece to all of it,
Right. Man, I don't even know. I feel like I have so many different stories that kind of tie into what I was feeling and how I was kind of going through the motions at times, like similar to what you're saying. It's almost like you're looking down on yourself and you're like, really? Am I like really in this right now? Like what's happening? I left my house, so I didn't have that isolation type feeling. And I know, at least in Florida, we've dealt with, in being in practice, we've dealt with hurricanes where, the office is closed and you're corralled with your family and your kids in your house as you ride out the storm. And then it's a similar mentality. Obviously, this has gone on quite longer than a hurricane would, but you come back to work and you're like, oh my God, thank God I'm here. I love you people. I love this. Like, I needed to get away. Like, I love work, and it was somewhat of that sense, I think, for a lot of my staff that, when they were able to come back, that was a big thing. Kind of on the other side of it. So this is going more personal, but my grandmother's 102. She's supposed to be 103 this summer. And she lives in a nursing home in the panhandle of Florida. And she's confined to her floor in the nursing home. And I think about that a lot because exactly what you were saying, you were held up for 4 weeks, but she doesn't have a choice. It could be a matter of life or death if she went down to another floor, or somebody, from the outside came into her facility or something like that. And so I think that puts that into great perspective for me, because at least we have choices of things that we can still do. Yes, we have to do them very differently, and we have to be more cautious and more safe about how we do them. But that population doesn't, and so that's kind of helped me to keep going too. And I've been trying to write her letters and send her pictures and like doing as much as I can to give her some sense of the outside world, because she doesn't have that at all.
And and we're social creatures. So if there's one thing I really got, because I work too a lot with patients that come in and they are reclusive. Like, they live a reclusive life. They stay in. They are not. They don't want to socialize. And for what I learned, I got a greater appreciation for that as well, because I was, besides the social isolation that was imposed, I was self-imposing another layer of isolation by not even going outside, which my daughter got on my case, like, not like she, okay. So that's, and just getting sunlight, right? Moving, like, you're so spot on with that movement. physical movement. We have to, we're therapists, right? We're really, that's what we do. I mean, we have to move, but moving your body moves your emotions. It moves the cells in you. It all the connective tissue, your brain, your oxygen, circulating. Like, it is essential. So, even tying this experience into sedentary living, right? This is so critical that we come out with greater understanding about the effects of emotional, mental, physical, how all that interplays, right? When it comes to functionality, when it comes to engagement, when it comes to your perspective on how you see your life, how you see your situation. Because I mean, I lost track of who I was, like, seriously, and I had to question, like, what's going on with me. And I've been praying a lot, crying a lot, and, like, I get outside now. I've actually driven a few times, which is still less than what I normally do, but at least I'm moving. But it's so important. What you were doing was to keep moving, keep the process, keep your own internal process going, so that you keep an semblance of norm, right? Whatever that norm is, that perspective of, okay, I don't know anything, but I know that this is what I can do right now, and to the best of my ability, and so the awareness, the self-awareness, this really is I think a point in time to focus on self-care, right? And I wrote a book on self-care. I was like, I need to read my book, because I was not. So I veered off somewhere, but like, what you instinctively, like, those pieces were really important pieces to help you to have that peace, without, but the other thing I wanted to say was that what you take on that is not necessarily your stuff, like you're talking about your grandmother, and I know that the hardship around, my daughter's an emergency room physician, and so, and my 2-year-old grandbaby, and there's a lot of stress in her regimen of what she is doing, and the fear of, her home with her daughter, and so, and my other daughter was out working, like, there's other factors that are playing into this that you have no control over. Right. And then the world and all the deaths and no closure. I had a patient send me a picture of his mom, and from the window, because she's in a nursing home, and they have COVID. They actually had some COVID patients in there, and they kept her confined to the room. And you could visit her from the window. And he took a picture, and he sent it to me. And she was just sitting like this. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is not the television. This is someone I know, and that, she doesn't have it, thank goodness. But the lack of closure, that part with people who have lost lives, and I do know more direct involvement of that, and where people have lost their lives, and I know those people who know those people, and it's not on the TV, so the reality is, it's not someone else's problem. This is something that requires all of us to pause, right? Because we don't even realize that we can take on the energy and this static thing that becomes burdensome in the system.
Yeah. And I think to add to that, I feel like, to some extent, our position, our profession, it was kind of like, do we close and not contribute to potential spread, or do we continue to be open because we have to serve these knee replacement patients that literally just had surgery, and continue so that they don't have to undergo surgery again? So it was like this very difficult period of time where how do you make that decision, you know? So we were in a very, you know, our a lot of professions, a lot of the medical professions that weren't, you know, on the quote unquote front lines, but we're still having to make sure that we're helping people that have health issues.
Exactly. And yeah, and the safety, because, you know, that's the whole thing. I mean, because we didn't have concrete information. We just had information that had a lot of gray.
Mm-hmm.
and the risk was there, and then you don't want to be one contributing to for what we knew, you know, to a situation. And yeah, and you know, and what I noticed too, where there were sometimes health professionals going after each other, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I thought, come on now, this is, we really have to step back and assess why we do the things that we're doing, you know, to that we're doing it with integrity, right? And we're mindful about it. And, you know, so, woo. So how are things like now? Like things are opening. What's happening now?
Well, where we are, things, yeah, things are open, like gyms are open. I think they're all like limited with capacity, but like gyms and restaurants and stuff like that are open. At this point, I don't have any desire to do either. But they're open. We have our full staff is back on like a part-time basis, and they have been, I want to say, for 3 weeks. No, maybe it's this whole month of May. And then next week, June 1st, I have everyone back on a full-time, like rotating basis. So I've had to add hours into the schedule. We're open on Saturdays now, which we've never been before, but it just is I'm able to split my team up better. So there aren't, you know, tons of bodies in a confined space like we were before.
Yeah, so you're making those adjustments. So how do you feel now than you did, you know, like?
Well, I feel kind of like a rock star for the fact that like we survived this,
Yeah.
right? Like we were safe about everything we did. I was, you know, strategic enough to make it so that we could come back. So, geez, I don't know. After going through something like this, I feel like I could take on anything.
You know, and I think an important part why I feel that's so for you is because you did take a moment to not be reactive. First of all, you didn't just, and you took a moment to like, okay, all right, let me, you know, be in my body. Like you took measures to give yourself opportunity for as much clarity, you know, in insight, in looking forward, in looking at the whole picture, and really being quite thoughtful, okay, and quite and thoughtful with yourself, because it starts with us. Our presence to ourselves matters when we show up for other people, right? When and you showed up in your heart, because and they felt that. That's why you got, right? They felt that you cared, that this decision was really something that you went in and were very thoughtful and to the best of what you could do, and it reflected that. So, you know, yeah, you're a rock star, man. But like you know, you're just like, but it's like it's rock, not like solid rock. You know, it's like, you know.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. And I'm not saying that just about me. I'm saying that really through anybody who got through this, having, you know, not just me and my family I'm supporting, it's 25 other individuals and their families. So that's a lot of pressure. you know, in any normal situation, let alone something like this, that's a lot of pressure. So to be able to come back from that and say, look, I can rehire all of you guys,
Yeah,
was,
that's wonderful. That's really wonderful. And you know, I'm you know, we count our blessings, and you know, we learn from it, and to be wiser, and to allow ourselves to grow, because this is about growth, right? It's about growth, and taking opportunity to realize that we can grow through this, and come out on the other side a little wiser, a little like, you know, you're breathing and you're like, I feel good about what I did, you know, and
right,
so you're learning to trust yourself even more, right? That I
right,
can handle things, and
right, right. And it's not over, you
right,
know, I mean,
right.
so
Oh yeah. Yeah.
who
Yeah.
knows, you know, how long this stuff's, some of this is going to persist and how it's going to change
Yeah.
healthcare, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So so I am you know, we're just going to start opening up next week, everything in Vegas, and that should be interesting. But you know, I really, I just want to give you the credit for being true to yourself, okay? And because it matters, um, and it's important that you recognize it matters, and feel it, because I mean it, okay? And you're an example for others who may have had a tough time the same way, but made a different decision, right?
Sure.
And so, you know, your group that you have there is it's good that they have you as their base, you know, and you know, and where this will go, you know, time will tell. But good on you, girl. Good on you. So
Thank you.
I'd love for you to share, actually, you know, if folks want to learn more about what you do as far as with your business, and share websites, share whatever you'd like to share.
Yeah, yeah, sure. So, our physical therapy practice is Hohman, which is my last name, hohmanrehab.com. Our software company, my husband and I, is called Heno, HENO.io is the website. It's EMR practice management. And that's one thing I didn't say is it was interesting from the software business perspective to see some of these owners, the very different swing in how they responded. You know, we had some that immediately were like, oh, gotta cut back my account, put it back to one provider, gotta, like, you know, button up and hang tight here and figure out what's going on. And then we had other ones where it was probably our busiest couple months for that ever for the software company, because we had other owners that were like, you know what, I'm going to use this time. That's the one thing we all have right now is time. So I'm going to use this to really, you know, button up the systems within my practice, train the staff, get them all on board with, you know, a new kind of process and procedures of how we do things, and to streamline it during this time. And then when we get back and busy, we're much more efficient. So it was interesting to see like the different swing from that perspective too. I also do consulting with other practice owners, which has been super fun, especially during this time, because everyone is living the same thing, but kind of has a different version of it. You know, different areas of the country are hit in a very different way, and the patient populations they see is very different. So that has been, that's probably been my favorite part of consulting people right now, is to be able to walk them through, you know, how to go about navigating this right now. And not that I'm the expert at navigating COVID by any means, but it's good to have somebody that's there doing it with you. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, that's wonderful. That's really wonderful. And you know, you have this versatility in here. You have got so that, you know, Well, also not having all your eggs in one basket, right? It's yeah, that's a whole nother subject matter about, when we encounter something as radical as
Right.
this. So, but yeah, I'm happy for you, Katie, and things are coming out, and you have a good perspective and grasp on things. So I wish you all the best, and continue to take good care of yourself and
Thank you.
your group there, who is very, very lucky and fortunate and blessed to have you. So
Thank you. I appreciate that.
yeah, and thanks so much for your time. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So we will say toodles, and I'm gonna stop recording here.